Kaunsanga Hinudikya Ang. In Haida, I'm called Kaunsanga. That's a man who walks in the room carrying a newborn child, someone who brings a special day. Dik is hat Ang. I'm of the northern Haidas. We're called the old ones because we're the keepers of the language, the history. And I'm also from the eagle side of the what we call Kuala. I'm Tak. And then my crest is Atlana. Atlana is an eagle with two heads. That's my crest. And I'm from the Konnai, from the whale house. In English, I'm Dr. Woodrow Morrison, B.A.J.D. And I've been working for VACFAS now as a contract worker for 8 years in Strengthening Families program and 4 years in Strengthening Fathers. And this is my 3rd year as a family support elder working in family preservation for VACFAS. My introduction, I guess you might say, to the world of social work was my wife was recruited to teach in the School of Social Work at Calgary University. And so from time to time she would have me come in and talk to the students, and then gradually it became more and more to where I did it on a regular basis. But part of what I was doing is called tribal protocols, is what I called it. And so what it was we were doing some work in what we call indigenous science. At the time, and it may even be prevalent today, everybody was going with PR, this participatory research, but it doesn't work with tribal peoples, because the moment that you bring two societies together, you create a dialectic. In other words, there's a tension between the two and you just can't get past it. So what that means is if you come into the society, even if you're a member of that society, and you ask a specific question, any particular question, it causes the person to have to answer that specific question. And maybe that's not what you're looking for. So instead of asking questions to which you are already sure you know what the answer might be, instead of asking a question, you begin first from the point of view that when I have something very important to tell someone important to me, or maybe even not very important to me, but I have something important to talk about, I have two questions. Is this the right time? Is this the right place? And if I'll do that with people with whom I'm related, why should I not do this with social work clients? Because this is their lives. And so it has to be one in which they feel comfortable. So instead of just sit down and we start asking questions, I might sense that this isn't right, so why don't we just go out and have a cup of coffee and we'll sit and we'll talk. And then when we get there, the first thing I do is I self-disclose. It can be anything. Driving to work today, those idiot drivers out there almost run me off the road. And so when I self-disclose something like that, this other person will self-disclose something. And once that process begins, I start leading the conversation in such a way that I don't ask any questions, but I pay attention to everything this person is saying. If necessary, I might even ask permission, can we record this? But that'll skew everything, because the person is then aware that you're writing everything down. But if you use your memory and not try to get ahead of the person, if you're listening for feelings, then you're not trying to get ahead of the person speaking. But if you're listening to make replies, then you're not listening to anything. You're trying to guide what it is you want. So instead of doing that, you just let that person talk, and then self-disclose something else. And as you go through this process, you build a relationship with that person to where this person starts to trust you. It's not because you've done anything particularly trustworthy, but it's because you've engaged this person as a person rather than as a client. We do the same thing with children. When a child comes in, my child comes in and says something about, Charlie was shoplifting, I was with him, we almost got caught. Instead of criticizing that child or bawling the child out, wow, you must have been really scared. What happened? And so you get them talking. And the more they talk, the more they trust you. And so they'll come to you again and again because somebody is listening. I was a storyteller in the communities around Vancouver in elementary school, but I never told any stories. What I would do is I would tell the kids I'm a mind reader. If someone has a very good story, I can hear it. You have a story, don't you? And one kid just kind of went like this. I said, I want to hear that story. And he started glancing. I said, don't pay any attention. Tell it to me. And the kid would tell me a story. And I wouldn't let the other kids interfere. And when this person finished, I said, that was one of the best stories I've ever heard. You have a story, don't you? And so I would get those kids to tell me stories. But what I was doing, I was giving them an adult who listened to them. If they find one adult that listened, they're going to go find another one. Something that happened too is like with the residential schools in the 60s scoop. They simply just came in and took kids. They either used the Army or the RCMP to come and take children away from families. And this went on for generations. And then the 60s scoop came along, they did the same thing. And then when we finally got into a welfare system, we gave social workers that same power. A child protection worker has more power than the police. They can come in your house and take your kids. And so that's the way they're perceived, as baby snatchers. They're going to come in and take your kids. So this fear is there. And it's not going to go away just because you speak nicely to them. And it's something that we have to work through. I've been working with Strengthening Families now for, this has been my 8th year now. And we finally created a safe place to where people can talk about anything. We tell them we're contract workers. I don't work for any ministry. I don't report to any ministry. I report to a coordinator, but I only report if somebody's using or abusing, and then she deals with it. But whatever you say here, these are your feelings. They're true for you. This is your life. You got to tell us how you want your life to be. Maybe it's not what the social worker is telling you got to do, but it's what you need, what you want. What do you want for your kids? We ask you and you say you want your child to be courteous, you want them to be honorable, you want them to be honest and brave and all these other things. But how do you do that? Do you beat it into them? Do you preach it into them? Or do you demonstrate it? You show them how to be. When I was a kid, that's what these old men would do. Sit down, dear boy. I'm going to show you something. Prepare your mind, prepare yourself. So there was a whole process involved in how I would prepare myself to listen. And so they didn't just tell us things, they showed us. And so when you start showing children that, say, the other thing that really bothers me about the social welfare is that men, fathers, are non-existent. We push them out of the system. I've seen situations where a social worker will take a mother and a child and put them in a residence where the father can't go. So what's he to do? He goes back with his drinking and drugging buddies because he's got no place else to go. You read all the casework studies, the father's either in jail, he's a druggie, abuser, whatever, but he plays no role in that family. And that's what Strengthening Families is all about. How do we put together the whole family? So pay attention to the dynamics of what's going on rather than simply the physical things in front of you. My job as a family support elder is I'll go in and take a look at the same thing the social worker looked at, and I'll see something almost entirely different. I've seen situations where the social worker would say this person is angry and aggressive, And I see somebody who's frustrated and angry, and it comes across as aggressive, but it's not the same thing. So many of our families are frustrated because they're absolutely terrified of you. They know you have that power. You don't even need a subpoena, you don't have a search warrant, or whatever. You can just walk in the house. If they don't want to let you in, you call the cops and they'll come and go in after you anyway, because they have that much power. And so the families react to that, and they're not going to tell you the truth on a lot of things, because they're afraid you'll use that against them or take their kids away. And so their whole world is one of fear. And so part of your responsibility is to find ways in which to reduce that fear. It's not going to be automatic, but you have to demonstrate through your practice, how you practice, how do you work with families, that you're really trying to do the best you can, because the legislation tells you got to do this, you got policies for this, and a lot of times your clients will see you moving the goalpost, but maybe that really isn't what it is. Maybe the situation has changed to this, which means you got to use a different policy. And so I think it's really a part of the responsibility of the social worker or whomever to teach the clients what it is that they're facing, because you might come in for voluntary care and you have no idea what your life can what can happen to your life once you get into the system. So social workers should be very careful and say, look, you don't really have any problems now, but maybe we can give you a little bit of support here or there to kind of get you over the rough spots. But just be very aware that once you get into the system, you've got all these laws and policies and procedures. All those will all suddenly you get caught up in the whole thing. It's a big spider web. So be very careful about that, because they're terribly, terribly afraid of you. When you show up at the door, in some places, they know the difference between a social worker coming from a delegated agency and one from the province. The one from the province is the bad guy. The other one is not. But they know the difference very quickly. So I'm just saying, have a soft mind. That means have some empathy, because, well, you wouldn't be doing this work if you weren't to some degree an empath, because you can feel those things and you want to make some changes. But the policies, the regulations, find ways of stepping out of the box and into the circle. See if you can break the cycle without breaking the circle. In other words, look at the ways in which you can maybe redefine what that policy means, redefine what that says, because they're only words, and English is a very ambiguous language. In law, you learn that facts do not speak for themselves. You can't change the facts, you've got to live with the facts, but you can color them, which means that you can really present something in a much softer way than simply being very clinical and putting down goals and objectives and without ever feeling anything, because we also recognize that you have to work with facts. You can't work with only your own opinion. So just be aware of the amount of power you have and be careful and kind in how you wield that power. My spirit says so too.